to it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the 18th RDA plenary meeting, our fourth fully virtual one. And this time we're not in Costa Rica or Melbourne or Edinburgh, but we're in global RDA land. And this is an experiment for us in the Research Data Alliance. We've never fully owned the plenary. We've always had local hosts to help us out. So bear with us and please provide us with lots of lovely feedback. When I say lovely feedback, I mean in all senses. All criticism, constructive criticism is most valued because this, as I said, is an experiment for us. So you're all very welcome here. And as there are always newcomers to our meeting, I hope, and I don't know if you can put it in the chat and say if you are or not, those old timers, bear with me while I give you a slight refresher about the Research Data Alliance before I move into a few other thoughts and words around the plenary. So my name's Hilary Hanaho. I'm the Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance. This is my 8th plenary meeting in this role, my 4th virtual meeting. So I hope to break the record next year and go back to being have more in presence. I have a truly wonderful job in representing a global community. And I've started to talk recently about the Research Data Alliance in terms of being a global public asset, because I fully believe that it is. RDA has this very grand, complex and ambitious vision of researchers and innovators openly sharing and reusing data across technologies, disciplines and countries to address the grand challenges of society. And that vision was in fact coined and defined, if you like, even before the RDA itself was really launched in 2013. And it stands the test of time. It's still very true today. And the mission to achieve that vision is that we build those social and technical bridges that enable that vision, or the open sharing and reuse of data. And while I do fully believe that the in-presence events have helped us greatly with the social part, I do still see a lot of connections being made in this, if you like, virtual world that we had. So I think that the social part has been very important. It is very important in the community that we all work in. And we hope that we have at least maintained it. We would, of course, like to improve the social interactivity, but that's not as easy as seen. So this road has bumps in it, but it's really just a road to show you a little bit along where RDA, for those of you who don't know, it was, we had some global funders who were discussing things for a couple of years. They agreed, they aligned, and then they all funded programs in their own regions that came together to allow us to launch the Research Data Alliance in March 2013. And it is a road that continues, of course, way beyond now where we are now. But just to show you a little bit on the way we have grown exponentially across the years. And now we have over 12,200 individual members, and we have 99 groups at the moment. Of course, our groups open and close as time goes on, so it's not you can't do a trajectory with the groups. And we have, I think it's more than 54 actually outputs and recommendations. So truly a consolidated, if you like, community that has grown over the years. And there's plenty of information about all of that on the website in a nutshell. I won't move on. When we defined RDA, there were 6 guiding principles that are fundamental. They were then, they still are now, and it's important to remind you of them. They are valid, and I ask you to bear them in mind during the meetings and during this actual plenary and these 5 days of events. But they're also guiding principles that are not just valid for the work around the work of RDA and the activities that you all can do in the community and in the groups, but actually also for the organization itself. So openness, that everything is consensus driven, that we are inclusive, that there is harmonization, that everything is community driven and non-profit and technology neutral. Very important. And RDA is a community-driven organization. All the work and the heart of RDA is by the community for the community. And we have members from over 145 countries worldwide, so I think we can say that we're global. And I like to talk about RDA as a family, because we have like all families, we have many, many different components. We have, and each of them are very important. So we have these individual members, which we, I suppose, collectively call data professionals. You might not all identify with that, but bear with me while I use that word. But what is true about all of you is that you are all volunteers. And these 12,200 members interact on different levels. Some people are driving groups, some people are contributing to groups, some people are just observing and learning and taking stock of what's going on, and all are welcome. We have a wonderful family of 69 organisational members. It has grown considerably this year, 56 organisations and 13 affiliate members. Our affiliate members are organisations that are like-minded or have similar, if you like, mission and vision. And we collaborate and synchronise together for the benefit of our communities, like CoData, the World Data System, DataCite, ORCID, CORE, for the Coalition of Open Access Repositories, and more, and the others will forgive me for not mentioning them. And then we have regions. So we've always had national activities, if you like, but we're formalizing that more and more. And we have around 30 regional or national champions, of which 4 are contributing and 26, if you like, are aspiring. And I won't go into the categorization of that. But what I'd like to highlight is that these are all part of a family that we have. And for the first time, as I said, this is a plenary meeting that is completely owned by the Secretariat. The Secretariat, who I will show at the end, are a staff at the moment of 7 people, of which 2 are full-time and the rest provide some of their time. The other 5 are in-kind support. And this Secretariat are really the only, if you like, directly or indirectly paid staff. All of the rest of our governance bodies, all of the family that you see are volunteer. And I think that makes RDA really, really quite unique. We asked our organisational members this year to be the hosts and the organisers of the plenary sessions that you will see a little bit more about afterwards. And our regions have very kindly are organising the networking sessions. So it's a fully, if you like, driven by the family. At the moment, as I said, we have 99 active working groups, and we're so proud to have our first community of practice, which we will talk a little bit more about in the plenary session with Leslie and Susan afterwards when I finish. And then, of course, we have our flagship outputs from RDA. So, and the heart of RDA now, it's always been the working groups. Then we added the interest groups. And now with the maturity, we've brought in communities of practice. And I won't mention much more about that until we move on to the session afterwards. But I think we should say that RDA has really an abundance of resources and experts. So as I said, it's a global public asset. It is open to all to get involved, and it offers global solutions and global platform to collaboratively, collectively develop new solutions, take up the ones that are available. So I cannot say how unique it is. And somebody said it wasn't me, but they said, if RDA didn't exist, you'd have to invent it. And I very much like that. I think it's very true. And of course, we have this proverb that I often like to say, and I really believe it. I think in the community of RDA, it's so true. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And RDA has gone very far so far in our 8 years of existence, 8.5. And we wish to go much further over the next, gosh, as long as the community feels that we are valid. So I'd like to give you some insights into the plenary now before I finish. So little highlights and things. So we have 590 participants and we're counting. There are 37 countries represented by the participants. And I say +1 because apparently 2 of our participants identify Lancashire as a country. So welcome to the Lancashire, new Republic of Lancashire as well. So it would be 38. What I would like to highlight to you is that in terms of all the sessions are being recorded. They will be within 24 to 48 hours. Please provide the time for my wonderful secretariat to get them linked on the agenda. And for 4 weeks afterwards, they will still be available to you through Whova, after which, as we always do, they'll be publicly made available to the community from the RDA YouTube channel about mid-December with the linked from the program. We we use UTC, Universal Time, I can't remember now what it is, but it's standard RDA time, which is at the moment, because of daylight saving, the same as Greenwich Mean Time. But please, the RDA, use the time converter, but we use UTC because it depends where you are in the world. And of course, it's a 5-day event, today, tomorrow, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week. Just a few notes on the numbers of things. So we have lots of different sessions. For those of you who don't know, Birds of a Feather are the sessions where it's an idea to see if there's interest in RDA. And so we have 14 of them on the program across the 5 days. We have networking sessions, as I said, run by our regions. Thank you for that. The first one was this morning, and the rest are going on. I'll show them quickly afterwards. And then we have the interest groups, the working group meetings, the community of practice, and also, of course, the joint group meetings, which is where groups come together to sort of identify overlapping. And there's a total of 85 sessions being run over the 5 days. As I said, I'd like to highlight a little bit because this is the first time and it's always difficult to identify. We usually identify themes, or we look for, speakers, and we have world-class organizations as our organizational members. And who better than to give us ideas and to organize the sessions on different areas of interest to our organizational members. So we're very grateful to them. The first one is after this, facilitating active communities of practice to address data challenges. Wednesday next week is implementing FAIR, funder policy updates, roadmaps and next steps. Then we have one on combining data community strengths and high parallel computing opportunities. We have the RDA business and sustainability session, where Natalie Harrower and I will discuss a little bit about the financial sustainability of RDA and things on the horizon for next year. And then on the last day of the plenary, we have data and software sharing, the role of societies and associations, and then a closing plenary on Thursday the 11th, where to give you some flavour of the future meetings together. The poster sessions, we have 26 interactive posters, and we're using a virtual reality app on GatherTown to do that. And there are 2 opportunities to listen to the Minute Madness and some very quick presentations on the posters. And there will be a prize for the best poster. So please pop in when you have a moment to the poster session and have a look around. We also, as I said, have the networking sessions. The next one is tomorrow. Our US colleagues are doing an interactive tour of the hometowns. We have Recipes Without Borders hosted by RDA France. And for those of you who would like, you can go to the no sunscreen, but sunglasses to join them at the beach, like it's 2019, hosted by ARDC in Australia. Plenary Pathways. So it's always difficult for people to navigate the plenary thing where there's such a rich agenda. So for many years now, started by the Technical Advisory Board, supported by the Organisational Advisory Board, we have the Plenary Pathways, where we try to, if you like, categorise a little bit the different types of sessions, so that if you're interested in a specific area, that you can see what sessions are on and what day for your area of interest. This time we have asked the session organisers, our conveners, to self-select the pathways. So we'd be very interested on your feedback on the navigation and the different systems around that. But it's a way of organising the plenary. And in fact, if you're interested in understanding in the agenda in Whova, that's where I've just highlighted a couple. So the FAIR agenda, policy development, data infrastructures, they are the different pathways, if you like, and that's how you see them. In terms of other aspects of the program, in case you're wondering, this is the one from the RDA website because they're mirrored on both. They all obviously show you the legend of the group, if it's an interest group and a working group, what stage it's at, because they have a life cycle in RDA, and it's always helpful for people to understand, is it starting out, is it later on, whatever, is it, you know, wrapping up or whatever. So the color coding is there. That's how you read the agenda, and it's all on the web page. So I'm going to finish now, but I really do have to say thank you to that Secretariat, those 5 wonderful people. Plus we have a new member, Irina, who has just come on board to help with the plenary meeting coordinator. And I'm sorry I don't have her on the slide. We might by the end of the week. But also to a team of colleagues at DCC. They were the hosts of the virtual plenary 17 and have been helping Alex and all my colleagues from the Secretariat to manage this. It is no mean feat to organise a virtual plenary. It was a tough decision to make. Not everybody was in agreement with doing it. We do realise there's a lot of Zoom fatigue, but we felt RDA has always had this milestone of 6 months where it's an opportunity for the groups not just to come together and, if you like, in a 6-monthly cycle to see where they're at, but also to share with other people who would like to get involved and to see what it's doing. And we felt that this moment in time was important to maintain it. So we appreciate very much the 590 and counting of you who have signed up, who have supported it, who have paid the registration fee, which, by the way, supports and again is an experiment for us, but means a lot to the foundation and hopefully will allow us to offer better services and more support. As I said, I can't underline enough, if you see 5 people plus myself and 1/2 other person are those that manage this wonderful community, and we are very grateful to you for all the work that you do, your patience with us, and all the feedback that you always give us. But the real round of applause goes to the Secretariat for the work that they have been doing all last week, in the last months, and of course this week and next, late nights, early mornings. And don't forget that we're also in the middle of organising the next plenary meeting, which we fervently hope will be in presence as well. So our plan is, of course, that IDW 2022 from the 20th to the 23rd of June in the Republic of Korea, Seoul, will be a hybrid event. We believe, by the way, I'm always asked about this recently, that having virtual meetings has allowed many people who possibly wouldn't have been able to join the RDA plenary meetings to attend. And so we will continue along the hybrid road, but we also would like to see some in presence, because allowing new people to come and meet with us in new parts of the world and new regions is really fundamental to what RDA wishes to do. So you'll hear more about that one, of course, when we're closing, because we're just opening the virtual plenary now. And so we'll talk about our next steps for next year towards the end of the week. But of course, I can't thank you all enough for, as I said, the work that you do. RDA, the heart of RDA is the community. All the work that you have done. We've seen many new groups this year, more outputs, and we do realize that it is more and more difficult to balance the volunteer work and the, shall we say, your business as usual work. So we're grateful to the support that you give for RDA. We're grateful to the visibility, because as long, as I said, as the Research Data Alliance is valid and needed, then we are here to support and work with you. So with that, I will thank you all for your attention and transition to the next stage of this plenary session, which is to hand over to Leslie on to talk, and she's going to moderate, I think, and how would you say, chat around facilitating active communities of practice to address data challenges. So Leslie, and if you'd like, I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I'm seeing the pop-up, so I will go ahead and share just a title slide before we get into this. desktop one. Please let me know if anything looks strange. And Susan, I don't see you on camera yet.
My camera's
Oh,
on.
okay, then maybe something is just wrong with my Zoom. All right, hello everyone. It is great to be here with you. Thank you, Hillary and the Secretariat. This is definitely for me one of my most global communities that I'm part of, and I'm sorry not to be able to see you. I saw a few names of people I met at previous RDAs, but we're here together on Zoom, and I'm very happy to be here to discuss communities of practice. So my name is Leslie Shih, and I'm from the U.S. Geological Survey, where my role is coordinator of the USGS Community for Data Integration. And I'm here with Susan Shingeldecker, Executive Director of the Earth Science Information Partners, and Hillary Hanaho, Secretary General of Research Data Alliance, to talk about communities of practice in our different organizations and how we can work together to bring more value to our members. So we'll just start with some short introductions about our communities, how they work, and how they help members solve data challenges. I hope you'll see a lot of diversity in what it means to be a community of practice and different ways they can support their members in working with their data. After this session, we hope you'll have a better idea of where you fit with the different communities that are available to you, how you spend your time with them, and how you can help make them work better for everyone. Now, I saw, thank you. Many of you did already answer 2 short poll questions when you entered into the Whova for this session, but we decided it would be more accessible if we had a Menti poll. And this poll is going to be, there's a couple of repeats here, but there's just 4 very short questions, and we're going to leave this open for the first part of our discussion and then take a look at them after our introductions. But let's see, if I go to the chat. I just put in a link to a Menti poll, and also you see the code right up here. So anyone just chat or say something if I messed up that link sharing. But with that, I look forward to seeing the answers to these questions in just a little bit. But I'm going to move on to the next part, which is just some brief overviews of different communities of practice. We're going to start with Hillary, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, so I'm going to start, and the organization with the newest, I suppose, communities of practice. So as I mentioned very briefly in the opening, for the Research Data Alliance, the communities of practice discussion started last year, where we defined with actually our first community of practice. They helped us very much, the agricultural data interest group chairs and the technical advisory board, and it was really, I suppose, it came from the community, like most things in RDA do, the need to sort of create something that didn't really fit in the 2 categories that we had. So working groups and interest groups. So working groups for RDA are quite, specific in time and what their focus on the deliverable are. While as interest groups are they look often at broader topics. But at the same time, it still didn't quite fit this idea of something, how would you say, more coordinating activity. So it was almost like the interest groups were bursting at the seams, and the idea of the community of practice came along. So we invested with them. I'm very grateful to the agricultural data co-chairs for the work that they did with us. A considerable amount of time in defining a framework that would, of course, still respect the existing categories that we had. And our first community of practice has just been launched. In fact, they had their session just before this, and it's the agricultural data one. And I suppose the the important thing, or where we hope to see the difference, if you like, between perhaps an interest group, is this kind of more umbrella idea. Yes, or so the agricultural data, they have a lot of work. They've had a lot of working groups. They continue to have them, and other interest groups. I mean, the food and agricultural data, if you like, community is already a large one, but they can act as this sort of internal, how would you say, telescope to see what's going on in RDA, what activities and solutions are there, if you like, for their community, what doesn't exist, and perhaps encourage the creation of new groups and new activities, but also communicating with the external communities so that they can raise awareness and leverage on, of course, what goes on for RDA in RDA. So I think, there's a real two-way win-win opportunity for both RDA as an organization, but also as for the agricultural data. But I can talk a little bit more about that afterwards. That's the kind of example. So we have that one at the moment. So for us, we're rather more immature with respect to both you and ESIP. And of course, we need to learn, and it will be sort of a learning experience for us as to how to help them and support them and make this a valuable, if you like, asset for the community and for the agricultural data group itself.
Thanks, Hillary. Why don't we move on to the next short intro? So Susan, please, over to you.
Sure, thank you, Leslie. So since all of you here, if you're here, you probably already know about RDA, but I don't want to assume that you all know ESIP before I launch into kind of our view and our version of communities of practice. So ESIP is a specific yet broad community focusing on earth science data professionals across domains and sectors. We have over 150 partner organizations who participate in ESIP. We hold 2 large conferences a year, kind of like RDA, attracting as many as 500 people at each conference. But what I see as the life of the ESIP community is found in what we call our collaboration areas, and that is our committees and our clusters. And these groups meet monthly to work on specific challenges and opportunities in the field of earth science data management. We have active participation spanning international, US federal government agencies, state agencies, academic institutions, and leading private sector technology firms. This is one of the things that I think differentiates the ESIP community from some other earth science, especially related communities, is that cross-sector nature of the community. And to me, this richness of perspectives makes ESIP really fertile ground for problem solving as participants bring that range of perspectives to the table. Beyond that, while specific to earth science data, ESIP is diverse in the domains and the technical areas we cover. We work to be an agile organization using what we call a cluster system, where groups of interested individuals can form a cluster around a specific challenge or area of interest that they are seeing. They spin up this group, the group sets specific goals. The ESIP staff then provides the virtual infrastructure that is needed to support their work. And ideally, when they are done, they spin down, might even go away. Going away can be success. And then they move on to the next challenge. And we repeat that cycle all over again. We also have some programs where we can offer small grant funding and other incentives that like cloud credits and other things in that area to help overcome barriers to innovation. So Leslie asked us to reflect specifically on some specific data challenges that our community has helped to overcome. So typically in ESIP, the first one that always comes to mind, and I hear it off the tongues of so many people, is ESIP's work with schema.org, and how in the early days, we really helped to catalyze the work of schema.org, and then looking at the impacts that has had on data search since its outset. Another area of work is in the area of data citation. ESIP first produced our data citation guidelines nearly a decade ago in 2012. And it is incredible to see where that work has gone since that first draft. A personal favorite of mine is our work with our disaster life cycle cluster on operational readiness levels, or ORLs. This was work that was done in partnership with another community of practice, the All Hazards Consortium, with the aim of increasing trust in data and really catalyzing data to decision making and enabling faster, more efficient decision making in the face of natural disasters. And then currently we are working on issues related to defining AI ready data. And our biological data standards cluster recently released a primer for navigating and selecting standards for biological data to ensure that it is fair. So if any of that resonates with you, we would love for you to engage with us at ESIP, and I'm excited for our conversation here today and to dive deeper into communities of practice. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, Susan. And while we're giving these intros, please do, if you have questions for any of us, go ahead and enter those into the chat. So I'm going to now tell you a little bit about my community of practice, and I hope you'll see the different scales at which these occur. So we kind of started with this very global scale and then moved to something a little bit more disciplinary. And now I'm talking about one that exists mainly in the US Geological Survey, but we are open to others to join and try to be as open as possible. So the Community for Data Integration is a community of practice that works together to grow knowledge and capacity in scientific data and information management and integration. And because it's run through the USGS, we focus on earth and biological science data used by the USGS and our partners, but also have a bit of a focus on some of the policies and requirements that we have in the US federal government. I do have to say that we've taken a lot of inspiration from both RDA and ESIP in how we run our community of practice. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this session today, is to try to share ideas between our groups. So what does it mean if you're a member of CDI? What we hope it means is you feel like you have more access to information and people that will help you do what you need to do with your data. We have a monthly virtual forum where we invite topics of broader interest, such as new research initiatives, new policy about the data we work with, and questions posed by our members about new tools and new services for delivering, analyzing, or visualizing data. We also try to host several workshops and trainings throughout the year, mostly themed around data skills and the use of data in scientific research. We have an annual proposals process where we look for seed projects that will make progress on data integration and management challenges. And then, like ESIP, we have smaller communities, also called collaboration areas, following the ESIP model, with a more narrow focus on technological or disciplinary topics, such as data visualization, metadata review, or geomorphology or risk research. So there's a lot of variety in how these smaller communities function. Some are more successful with just group Q&A and bringing challenges that they've come up with in the past month that they want to ask their peers, but others have more presentation-based gatherings. So to give one example of a data challenge that I think a lot of members were very excited to see addressed by the community is when some sort of emerging topic comes out and you just want to know who else is working in this area and how do I get started. Several years ago, it seems like ages ago now, do you remember when machine learning was relatively new in the science community, or not really new, like had a rebirth, I don't know. So at that time, a lot of people wanted to learn tools or learn who else was working in that area. So we were able to support some workshops that they came as like proposals to us. And through those workshops, we were able to share tools and expertise that existed in the community and make connections between people who are working on that. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second here and maybe ask if Susan or Hillary have been keeping an eye on the chat, if there's any questions that we should be addressing here before we go to the poll results.
I think
Any specific questions we had? I shared some information on our biological standards work and some questions about international reach, but I think that's coming up in one of your questions.
Okay, well, I always love looking at poll results. So maybe if we could ask Alex to please share what has come in. Okay, thank you very much. I do see that on my screen. And let's see, what do we have here? So first of all, for the people in this group, do you participate in a community of practice and how many? So it's interesting that we have kind of most of the respondents are either they don't yet or one or two, which personally I think is a good number for someone to have on their plate. And then we have smaller numbers with 3 to 5 or 5+ communities. So great, thanks for answering that. Maybe we can go to the next one. Okay, how often do you participate in your communities of practice? I think this is something that maybe Susan and Hillary and I are interested in because we know you're overloaded. How overloaded are you? And it looks like there's a pretty even distribution here among those that participate weekly, monthly, and a few times a year, which, you know, I wouldn't have expected that result. So that's a kind of interesting result. And I will invite, Hillary or Susan, if you want to chime in with any thoughts on these results we're getting.
This one's really interesting to me. I will say that in ESIP, there are a lot of people that show up twice a year for our conferences, but maybe are not showing up at monthly meetings. So I actually would have expected a few times a year to have more answers. So I'm finding that really interesting. But I do think that to the point that someone made in chat, how do you define a community of practice, and how you define that, probably determines how people have answered too.
Yeah, Hillary, if you saw the question about RDA, and I know you have something specific in it called a community of practice, but I don't know if you were answering this poll, would you have considered RDA overall as a community of practice?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think so, actually. But it's so broad and, wide. I think we ourselves, had to come up with a definition of a community of practice within the RDA context, like Susan just mentioned. So, of course, RDA itself is one, but it's become so big that it would be very hard to, how would you say, create an umbrella. I mean, one of the things that we struggle with a lot is just even helping people to navigate it and seeing where the connections are. And anybody who was in the session, I know you were, Leslie, and we discussed the challenges that communities of practice face, including that, and we are set, they have a big enough task to look inside RDA to see what's available and what could be of value. But yeah, so I think that communities of practice, for RDA, you could think of the big one, but I really think that the agricultural data one for us is the main one, and we expect it to be rather large as well, in terms of volume and size too.
Great, thank you, Hillary. Yes, I don't know why we always have to be working with these things that have many different interpretations, but that seems to be how a lot of things are. Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to the third question. Okay, so this one, of course, is hard to answer because you may be members of many communities of practice, but how would you rate your satisfaction on average? And the highest ones here are varies greatly and high, which is great for facilitators of communities of practice. We definitely want to make sure it's worth your time. And probably most of the time it's up to you. If it's not worth your time, you can always spend your time doing something else. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we see the distribution here. And I wish we had an anonymous way to hear about some of the lower responses. Maybe we'll get to that in the fourth question. Any thoughts on this one, Hillary and Susan?
I think, yeah, it's a really subjective question, because one of the things I talked about, and if I can wave the agricultural data flag again, is that, of course, we were, you know, in the Research Data Alliance, they really are a lighthouse. And it's not to take away from any of the activity that the other groups do, because everybody works at a different pace and in a different way. But I think the agricultural data one, they were the interest group right from the very beginning, and they have different mechanisms of leveraging very much on the work that the plenary meetings, organizing other meetings. They have co-chairs in different parts of the globe. So that's where the global interaction, of course, comes. And they share tasks a lot. They cover all the time zones. I mean, and we talked about the challenges now of communication of resources. So I wonder as well as, I mean, you know, the answer to this question, what did people think when they said with your participation? So is it their contribution? But on the other hand, I imagine that the more the community of practice is animated, the easier, the more things are communicated, that it's often like that, no? The more people get involved and the more they contribute to it. So it's a kind of, you know, that balance.
Thanks, Susan.
For me, this question, it's just, you know, I'm thrilled to see that 17 say hi, and varies greatly. Hopefully means there's some that they're high and they're low, but it's important for, you know, if you're having poor experiences within a community of practice, to communicate that with those who are responsible for organizing it, whether they are the volunteer leaders or whether it is the staff. Because at least from my perspective, your time is valuable. And if you're not getting your needs met in that community, you're not going to participate. And so how can we make the improvements to increase the effectiveness of a group? Because that's what really will drive engagement if people feel like their needs are being met. So I would just encourage you, if you're in that lower, it varies greatly, you know, to communicate with those people, either the volunteers or the staff, to let them know how you can get more, how they can improve that community of practice.
That's a great point. And I always am amazed by when there are staff members, like you have your director of communities, Megan Carter at ESIP, who really they want these communities to succeed so much, and they put a lot of work into helping that happen. All right, let's go on to the last question here. Okay, so this one was, if you could change one thing about your community of practice, what would it be? And this will help us in the next discussion that we have. And some of these answers, getting more people involved in actively participating, more sharing up front and more interaction, multilingualism, that is a huge one. More disciplinary experts as opposed to data experts. So maybe like diversity of people joining. This is great. Thank you. What all of us on the panel are going to be studying this afterwards to see what we can improve. More open conversations. So a lot of things about being engaged, getting people to interact, and having real outcomes. That is something that is part of the diversity of communities of practice. Okay. Well, hopefully Susan, Hillary, and I have taken a mental picture of all of these suggestions, and we'll move on to a few more questions that the three of us can talk about and continue to get your opinions in the chat, which I'm seeing go by and is great. Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Alex, for helping to share those poll results. So let me see if I can remember what is the first question. Okay, one that has come up today in one of the earlier community of practice sessions. The question is, how do you envision communities of practice in your organization working with or leveraging other communities of practice from other organizations or other groups. And also for those that have the global international aspect to address that a little bit. And I'll just quickly start by saying this question is very tough about how to connect the communities of practice where you feel that you're part of a community and you know that another group is discussing something probably relevant, but do you have the time to figure out what's going on there and how to integrate it into your own work? I really like the RDA model of their umbrella community of practice. I'll say that we've attempted some workshop sessions in the past to identify what is on the landscape and how should we connect, but it was just way too much to try to figure out in like a single session. So maybe I'll turn it over first to Hillary to have some comments on this connecting communities of practice question.
I can't hear my bells too loud, but any of those I interact with frequently are used to my bells. They ring at all strange hours of the day. So connecting communities of practice. Okay, so well, I'm going to go about this in different ways. The first thing is when we create a DAR framework, one of the things we have a certain sort of parameters, if you like, that they should meet. One of them being, of course, it should be international. And we ask that they be at least 3 co-chairs and regions across the globe. Yep. They also should be, our communities of practice for the moment are discipline or domain specific. And in the case of the agricultural data one, which again, as I said, is a bit of a model and a lighthouse and an easier one perhaps to start with, because they already had a number of rather large, well-recognized global organizations in, if you like, very involved in it. And RDA was their, if you like, their community, or at least the data home. So the connections there were more generated by us, by them, excuse me, rather than by us, but RDA allowed them, I suppose, to act to others. How can we, so you could say, well, then they don't need RDA. Why, you know, if they have these connections already? And that to me is the point of importance for us now. So how the success, if you like, or the connecting is, how can we well connect them within the network, within the RDA family, like I referred to in the opening, through our organizations, our affiliates, and where are the connections there within the work that RDA itself has done. And that is one of RDA's biggest challenges, irrespective of whether we talk about communities of practice or not, because it's so broad, there's so many things, so much work has been invested over time in trying to map the landscape of RDA, but that's a really, really big challenge. It seems easy and it's not. And I would hope that the communities of practice indeed can help us to do that, funnily enough, that we can start seeing patterns and we can connect. And, you know, we said that RDA's mission is to build the social and the technical bridges. To me, we have built the nuts and bolts for the bridges. So far, the community and practice is the bridge, actually, where you really see it all come together with that connection, if you like, within the community, but also outside, and what are the benefits for all. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy, and we talked as well about the challenges around communicating, the resources. Somebody in the chat says, well, you know, it's a job in itself. But forgive me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but isn't that your actual role, is the coordination? And I think that needs to be taken seriously, and it's unfair to think that you can also expect something. And with RDA, we often forget that this is completely volunteer. So we need to try and identify the resources and the structure to support them as well. So
thanks for the thoughts, Hillary. I'm just laughing at some of the comments in the chat, but I'd like to turn it over to Susan for her thoughts on the connection points.
It's always great to have a good chat thread going. Yeah, I love the structure of this panel because, right, we have Leslie, who runs a community that's really focused mostly within one US federal agency. We have me, who is coordinating a community kind of more domain specific, but across sectors. And we have Hillary, who is even broader across all research areas. And so I think it really speaks to the point that, you know, there are multiple places you can go to solve your problems. When I first joined ESIP, one of the things that I found most exciting about it was, I feel there are so many people out there in their day-to-day job, in their day-to-day research, who are hitting a brick wall. You're coming up against a problem or a barrier or a limitation, and you're thinking to yourself, I can't possibly be the only person in the world to encounter this problem. And to me, communities of practice are those places where you can come and you can find those other people who are frustrated by the same barrier that you are. And then you can have a broader group of minds all working to overcome that challenge. And that to me is really exciting. So specifically to this question of how do these communities of practice work together, gets back to that question, makes me think of vocabularies and ontologies that I'm talking with in other areas. How do we define community of practice? So I would say internally at ESIP, we have multiple communities of practice. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we get them to work together, and then how we bridge that externally outside of ESIP as well. So within ESIP, we are an organization of organizations, right? So our partners themselves help provide that multiply and magnifying effect of our work, because they solve a problem within ESIP, within that community of practice, and then they go out and they implement it with their organizations, which has an amazing amplifying effect, right? It allows that mindset change or that solution to really grow and be implemented exponentially out within a much, much broader community. Within ESIP, we have committees and we have clusters. In an ideal world, we have about 30 clusters and we have 4 main technical committees. Ideally, all those clusters would fit neatly under a committee and their work would roll up and they report out through their committee, and then, you know, bridges can be seen between the overlapping work. It isn't always that neat. We also have clusters because we focus on this agile framework where people can spin up around a challenge. Sometimes there are clusters that do not roll up neatly underneath a committee, but they do really great work independently, and we want to still fuel and enable that work to happen. Recently, we've had a very intentional focus on what we call cross-cluster collaboration. The alliteration there, just, you know, it's very fun, very fun. And this is especially apparent, and I think it's interesting with Hillary and RDA's focus on agriculture. Our focus to really pilot some techniques for enhanced cross-cluster collaboration is with our agriculture and climate cluster. As many of you know, there's so much work going on right now, especially in the area of wildfires, and that is an area that group is currently focusing on. And we actually have a fellow that is focusing specifically on bridging our discovery cluster, our semantic technologies work, our envirosensing cluster, and our agriculture and climate cluster, to really bring the right expertise and share what each of the groups are working on. And as has come up in the chat, and as we mentioned, this work takes talented individuals who are really good connectors, and that's usually staff, which means it takes resources. And so the other area we're currently focused on enhancing our communications resources, because I think that communication across communities of practice, it relies on dedicated communications effort. If we are, if we got to share out more what we're doing.
Thanks, Susan. I apologize if I may interrupt quickly, because I think you're kind of moving into what you wish some things you want to do more of. And I want to do a quick round of the 3 of us of this question that's related to the poll question of what do you wish your communities of practice could do more of? And maybe if you could just share quickly in a few sentences. Susan, let's start with you, since you were kind of going on that already. What do you wish you could do more of?
Well, I'll get my international note in there. ESIP strives to be more international. We're US government federally funded primarily, but we do have participation from multiple continents. We have leadership from multiple continents. So we are looking to, you know, make sure we are supporting the international needs of the community. We're also looking to enhance our communications capacity and have recently added a communications staff person, because volunteers, you get pulled in other directions and communications may not always be your top priority. And then the third thing we're focusing on is I'm really wondering about how to increase our agility, and wondering if a more matrix structure to the organization with technical expertise areas and domain areas would allow us to have more visibility on the expertise in the community and leverage it better.
Great, thank you, Susan. Now moving over to you, Hillary, what do you wish you could do more of?
Well, I suppose I could say there are two. One is COP specific and one is more RDA with respect to the communities of practice. I think, like Susan, again, the possibility of facilitating, if you like, the communication and the resources, because, as I said, we see it as a slightly larger thing than an interest group or a working group, and recognize that it means more work and for it to be successful and to be valuable. So having those sort of, if you like, the resources available. And as far as I'm aware, the agricultural data one at the moment is still relying very much on volunteers. So how we could facilitate that. I think from an organizational perspective, as we've invested in the communities of practice, we would like to see more of them. Yes, because if RDA's value is that also we will create these connections, and maybe not, and then we must be very careful not to have a proliferation of communities of practice in RDA just because we have that framework. But like where so the Earth Sciences one, we should be collaborating with our partners, and that's why I say the connection with the organizational members regionally are really important here as well, because we don't want to duplicate any efforts or say, well, we'll do it in RDA because we just put the RDA stamp on it. So and then, of course, the last thing I think would be, we've started this with a domain and disciplinary specific, if you like, limitation on it. I think, and I understand from our community, that there'd be a lot of appetite for, if you like, more technological, I don't know what, a domain agnostic community of practice interest. And it's a more challenging and a more difficult territory to go into, but I would very much like to see that. The possible feasibility to support that too, but that requires more resources from us in the Secretariat as well.
Great, thank you. I think I echo both of your answers in that one of the things I wish we could do more is taking what happens in groups and making it digestible, accessible, reusable to other groups quickly, because you might have monthly meetings and things happen and then it's on to the next one right away. So how do we just optimize the time that we've put in? Okay, so I'm going to move on to kind of the wrap up here. I see there's been a lot of chat that I need to go study, so I'm going to go download that. I have been in the Whova platform a little bit, and who knows, maybe the panelists can look at the chat, and if there's something they really wanted to get out to the community, again, we could put it in the chat for our session as one of the things. And just closing words, 15 seconds for your closing words on this discussion. I will start with Susan.
I would encourage all of you who said maybe you're not participating in a community of practice yet to give it a whirl. Find the place where you can find your people. It makes my heart happy when people at ESIP say, I found my people. And I would just encourage you to find the right community of practice for you. Dive in, give it a shot. Doesn't work out, don't give up. Go try another one, because I think that real progress can be made when we all work together.
Thanks, Susan. I'll put in my few words before turning it over to Hillary. So I loved that quote that Hillary put up about working together and going further, because sometimes I feel like really the communities of practice is so you don't feel alone in doing what you're trying to do. And sometimes just that feeling of community and progress and getting things done is what we're trying to do. Turning it over to Hillary.
Yeah, so I think that's my mantra would be that. I mean, we are lucky in that sense that, RDA is proof that you know, if you do it together, you go further. I would like to make a point, and given that it's in the chat, and I think that it is important. Maggie makes the point, we are built on volunteers, and sometimes people think that's part of the job. I think we know it's not in most of the cases, but that's maybe work that we also need to do, RDA and others, to show and to help people like Maggie and the other members of our communities, that communities of practice, that working groups, call them what we like, label them what we like, that these activities that we are all involved in and advocating for are actually not taking up more of their time, but adding to the knowledge, the expertise, and the global goal that we all have if we're involved in these communities of practice for that purpose. So I think there might be a work to be done there as well to help from this perspective. And just because it's volunteer doesn't mean it's not important. And I appreciate very much the challenge that many people have that it's after hour work that they put into these type of activities, or particularly RDA. I speak for my own, but full results and in chat. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists. Great to talk with you. Thank you to our audience. I see some requests about the materials, so we'll work with the RDA staff to see what we can do to get those shared out widely, and hope to see you at a future RDA session very soon. Thank you, everybody.
And thanks to Leslie and Susan, two of our organizational members. I'm really grateful to you they invested a lot of their volunteer time to come up with this lovely session. So thanks very much to both of you. I really appreciate it. And see you all at the next session in a couple of hours' time.